The first voicemail arrived at 8:14 in the morning. By lunch, there were 19. By the time I locked my office and walked to my car in downtown Portland, my phone showed 43 missed calls from Ohio. Interesting thing about family silence. It can last for years without breaking. Until money enters the conversation. Then suddenly, people remember your number perfectly. My name is Selena Lawson. I'm 30 years old. Chief Operating Officer at a community development firm in Portland, Oregon. And last Tuesday, for the first time in 7 years, my family decided I existed again. Not because they missed me. Not because they loved me. Because my sister Googled my name. Interesting, honestly. Because some families don't reconnect emotionally. They reconnect financially. The first voicemail was Meredith, my older sister. Golden child. Former marketing coordinator turned professional victim after her divorce finalized. Her voice sounded careful. Practiced. Like she'd rehearsed sounding casual in the bathroom mirror first. Selena, hey. Pause. I know it's been a while. Another pause. I really need to talk to you about something important. Interesting thing about manipulative families. They always call emergencies important things first. Never what they actually are. Requests. The seventh voicemail was my father, Gerald Lawson. A man who spent 30 years confusing silence with morality. Hey honey. Voice shaky. Artificially shaky. The family's going through a rough patch right now. Interesting, honestly. Because emotionally absent fathers suddenly rediscover tenderness once financial panic arrives. Voicemail 15 was my mother, Diane Lawson. The architect. The narrator. The woman who spent 7 years telling an entire town I was unstable. Her voice remained exactly the same. Controlled. Cold beneath the sweetness. Selena, this is your mother. Pause. I don't know what you've been doing out there. Interesting thing about narcissistic parents. They resent success they can't take credit for. But family is family. There it was. The Lawson family slogan. The emotional invoice disguised as love. Interesting, honestly. Because toxic families recycle the same sentence until it sounds sacred. Family is family. Translation. You owe us. The final voicemail. Number 43. Was Meredith again. And this time, the performance cracked. Selena. She was crying now. Real crying. Mortgage behind 3 payments crying. I need help. 2 words. Help me. Interesting thing about abandonment. The people who ignored your suffering for years often expect immediate compassion for theirs. I sat alone in my office after everyone left. Rain tapping against the windows. Portland gray outside. Fluorescent lights humming softly overhead. And listened to every voicemail twice. Not because I was considering helping them. Because I wanted to hear if even one person said, I'm sorry. Nobody did. Not one. Interesting, honestly. Because accountability terrifies people who built entire identities around being right. 7 years earlier? Thanksgiving 2019. Ridgewood, Ohio. Everything broke inside my mother's dining room. Population 4,000. 1 traffic light. 3 churches. And enough gossip to destroy someone's reputation before breakfast. Interesting thing about small towns. They don't need evidence. They just need repetition. Thanksgiving at the Lawson house always looked perfect from the outside. My mother's china. Candles burning. Turkey carved precisely. Wine poured before arguments started. Performance level hospitality. Interesting honestly. Because dysfunctional families usually care deeply about appearances. Just not people. 15 relatives squeezed around that dining room table. Aunts. Uncles. Cousins. People who watched me grow up invisible. My sister Meredith sat beside my mother wearing a cream sweater that probably cost half my paycheck. My father poured wine quietly like silence itself needed maintenance. I was 23. Working 2 jobs. Waitressing nights at Rosario's Italian Grill. Answering phones mornings at a real estate office downtown. Saving every dollar carefully. Not for luxury. Escape. Huge difference. Interesting thing about survival mode. People mistake your exhaustion for lack of ambition because they never see the math behind it. That Thanksgiving, my mother raised her glass first. To Meredith. Smile. Pause. Our shining star. Everyone lifted their glasses immediately. 15 smiles. 15 nods. 15 people celebrating the daughter who made the family look successful. Interesting honestly. Because toxic families don't choose favorites randomly. They choose whichever child reflects best on the parents publicly. I raised my glass too. Nobody asked about my life. Not my classes. Not my savings. Not my plans. I was sitting 3 feet away. And somehow still decorative. Interesting thing about scapegoat children. You become furniture long before you become independent. But that night, I made one mistake. I asked a question. Simple question. Small question. One sentence that detonated the entire family system instantly. Dessert had just been served. Pumpkin pie. Coffee cups steaming. The room relaxed. That soft warm post-dinner hum family's mistake for intimacy. Then I looked at my mother and said, "Mom, is there any money left in Grandma Ruth's education fund?" Silence. Immediate silence. Not awkward silence. Dangerous silence. The kind where everybody suddenly stops chewing at the exact same moment. Interesting honestly. Because truth entering dysfunctional rooms feels physical. My mother set her coffee cup down carefully. Too carefully. Then she looked around the table slowly. Surveying witnesses. Always witnesses. Interesting thing about manipulative people. They perform best with audiences. Then she smiled. Sweet enough to sound maternal to strangers. And said, "See? Pause. This is what I've been dealing with." I blinked. Didn't even fully understand what was happening yet. She's been acting erratic for months. There it was. Not an answer. A character assassination. Interesting honestly. Because narcissists don't defend themselves against accusations. They destroy the credibility of the person asking questions instead. Nobody defended me. Not one person. My Aunt Deborah reached over and patted my hand gently. "Honey, your mother just wants what's best." Interesting thing about enablers. They confuse peacekeeping with kindness. I stood up quietly. Walked into the kitchen. And started washing dishes. Because that's what I always did at family gatherings. Cleaned. Refilled drinks. Disappeared usefully. Interesting honestly. Because scapegoat daughters are trained early to earn space through service. The faucet ran loud. But not loud enough. Through the doorway. I heard my mother speaking to Aunt Patricia. Low voice. Careless confidence. The fund went to Meredith's sorority dues and car payments. Pause. Selena doesn't need it. Then the sentence that changed my life forever. She's not going anywhere anyway. I turned off the water slowly. Grandma Ruth left me $12,000. Separate education account. My grandmother told me herself 2 years before she died. Sat me at her kitchen table. Held my hands. And said, "This is for your future, sweetheart." Interesting thing about loving people. They prepare escape routes quietly for children they know are trapped. I walked back into the dining room. Heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. And looked directly at my mother. That money was mine. No yelling. No screaming. Just truth. Grandma left it for me. My mother didn't flinch. Didn't hesitate. Didn't even look guilty. Interesting, honestly. Because some people lie so often they eventually experience accusation as inconvenience instead of shame. "You're being dramatic, Selena." Then she tilted her head slightly. That familiar gesture. The one she used before rewriting reality publicly. "You always make everything about money." Money. Interesting thing about theft inside families. The thief almost always accuses the victim of greed first. I'm asking about my inheritance. And I'm telling you. Smile. You sound exactly like your grandmother. That stopped me cold. Because Grandma Ruth was the kindest person I'd ever known. And my mother said her name like it tasted bitter. Interesting, honestly. Because narcissistic people resent anyone who loved you without conditions. 10 minutes later, my mother gathered everyone into the living room. I knew the choreography already. Different holidays. Different crises. Same performance. Diane Lawson center stage. Concerned mother voice activated. Audience seated and ready. Interesting thing about dysfunctional families. They repeat emotional rituals until abuse starts feeling traditional. I've tried to keep this private. Trembling voice. Napkin dabbing fake tears. But Selena hasn't been well. I looked at my father. Gerald sat frozen in his recliner staring at the carpet. Silent. Always silent. Interesting, honestly. Because passive parents don't avoid harm. They outsource it. She's been having episodes. My brother Kyle leaned against the wall. Arms crossed. And nodded along with her. Meredith scrolled her phone without looking up. 15 relatives. Not one asked if I was okay. Not one asked for proof. Not one defended me. Interesting thing about scapegoats. Families need them because shared blame creates artificial unity. I went upstairs quietly. Packed one suitcase. $200 in tip money. Winter coat. And one small wooden box from my dresser. Grandma Ruth's box. The one I'd never opened because opening it meant accepting she was really gone. Interesting, honestly. Because grief becomes easier to carry unopened sometimes. I walked downstairs carrying my suitcase. Straight through the living room. Straight past 15 silent relatives pretending not to watch. And right before I reached the door, my mother said, "If you walk out that door, pause. Don't bother coming back." Interesting thing about freedom. Sometimes it arrives sounding exactly like exile. I didn't slam the door. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. I closed it gently behind me. Because deep down, I already knew something terrifying. I was never opening that door again. I was never opening that door again. Interesting thing about exile. Sometimes the hardest part isn't leaving. It's realizing nobody comes after you. Snow fell softly across Ridgewood that night. Streetlights glowing yellow against empty sidewalks. My suitcase wheels catching on cracked pavement while Thanksgiving dinners continued behind warm windows all over town. Interesting, honestly. Because family rejection feels cruelest during holidays specifically designed around belonging. I walked 3 blocks to the Greyhound station on Route 40. $200 in tip money tucked inside my coat pocket. One suitcase. One wooden box from Grandma Ruth. And absolutely nowhere to go. Interesting thing about survival mode. Your brain stops processing emotion once logistics become urgent enough. The woman behind the ticket counter barely looked up. Destination? I stared at the map behind her for 5 full seconds. Not because I had options. Because I needed distance. Huge difference. Interesting, honestly. Because abused people don't usually search for home. They search for escape velocity. How far will $200 get me? She tapped her keyboard. Chewing gum slowly. Portland, Oregon if you leave tonight. Portland. I knew nothing about Portland. Rain. Coffee. That was basically the full list. Interesting thing about life-changing decisions. Sometimes they happen simply because one city costs less than another. I bought the ticket. 38-hour bus ride. No refund. No plan afterward. The bus smelled like stale coffee, winter coats, and exhaustion. I sat beside the window clutching Grandma Ruth's wooden box in my lap the entire first night. Didn't sleep. Couldn't. Interesting, honestly. Because once your nervous system finally escapes danger, it doesn't trust safety immediately. America rolled past outside the glass in fragments. Cornfields. Truck stops. Dark gas stations glowing at 3 a.m. Tiny towns I'd never remember again. I watched all of it silently while trying not to think about what my mother was probably telling people already. Interesting thing about narcissists. They begin rewriting the story before you even leave the driveway. Somewhere outside Omaha. The woman beside me handed me half a sandwich wrapped in napkins. She was visiting grandchildren in Boise. Didn't ask questions. Didn't pry. Just noticed I'd been crying quietly for 2 hours. Interesting, honestly. Because strangers sometimes show more compassion in 10 seconds than families manage in decades. Thank you, I whispered. She nodded once and looked back out the window. No performance. No advice. No family is family. Just kindness. Huge difference. Portland greeted me with rain. Cold December rain soaking through my sneakers within minutes of stepping off the bus. The city smelled like wet concrete and coffee grounds. I remember standing outside the station holding my suitcase and thinking, nobody here knows me. And for the first time in my life, that felt safe. Interesting thing about reinvention. It begins the second nobody recognizes the role you were forced to play before. My first night was spent at a women's shelter off Burnside. Second week. A hostel with thin mattresses and bathrooms that smelled aggressively like bleach. I had no references. No local connections. No credit history. Nothing except work ethic and survival instincts sharpened by 23 years inside the Lawson household. Interesting, honestly. Because scapegoat children become frighteningly competent adults once fear stops draining all their energy. I found work within 2 weeks. Receptionist position at Hale & Associates. Tiny consulting firm in the Pearl District. 8 employees. 3rd floor office above a bike repair shop. Cramped desks. Cheap fluorescent lighting. Coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. And somehow, it felt more emotionally stable than my childhood home ever did. Interesting thing about healthy workplaces. People raised in dysfunction often mistake basic respect for extraordinary kindness initially. Margaret Hale interviewed me personally. Late 50s. Sharp gray bob haircut. The kind of woman who noticed details before introductions finished. She scanned my resume quietly. You worked 2 jobs while taking classes? Yes. You ever miss shifts? No. Interesting, honestly. Because survival leaves very little room for absenteeism. Margaret hired me on the spot. Reception desk. Phone routing. Scheduling. Mail sorting. Nothing glamorous. But it was mine. My paycheck. My desk. My life. Huge difference. 3 weeks later. I made one mistake. I checked Facebook. Interesting thing about trauma bonds. Even after escape, part of you still searches for proof that maybe they miss you. My mother's post sat at the top of the family page. Soft lighting profile picture. Church lady smile activated. Please keep Selena in your prayers. Pause. She's going through a difficult time and we just hope she's safe wherever she is. 112 reactions. 26 comments. Interesting honestly. Because public sympathy becomes addictive once someone learns how profitable victimhood feels socially. You're such a strong mother, Diane. Praying for your family. Hope Selena gets the help she needs. And near the top. Kyle's comment. She always was the dramatic one. 47 likes. 47. Interesting thing about group cruelty. People participate most enthusiastically once blame becomes socially acceptable. I deleted Facebook that night. Never reopened it again. Because something finally became clear to me. I could spend my entire life defending myself against lies. Or I could build a life so undeniable the lies collapsed under their own weight eventually. Interesting honestly. Because healing begins once survival stops revolving around explanation. The first year in Portland was brutal. Not inspirational brutal. Actual brutal. Flew without health insurance brutal. Counting coins for laundry brutal. Crying quietly inside grocery stores while calculating pasta prices brutal. Interesting thing about starting over. Movies skip the exhaustion because exhaustion isn't cinematic. I wrote not applicable under emergency contact forms for 2 straight years. Nobody to call. Nobody to list. Nobody safe. And honestly? That hurt more than hunger sometimes. Interesting honestly. Because abandonment becomes real in paperwork long before it becomes emotional. But slowly. Something strange started happening. My mother's voice inside my head got quieter. That constant narration. You're selfish. You're dramatic. You're not enough. Volume lowering little by little each month. Like static fading from an old radio station. Huge difference. Interesting thing about distance. Sometimes clarity sounds exactly like silence at first. At Hale and Associates. I started organizing things nobody asked me to organize. Client files. Budget spreadsheets. Grant archives. 3 years of paperwork reorganized in 4 days because chaos made my skin itch. Margaret walked past my desk one Friday afternoon. Stopped. Backtracked slowly. And stared at the filing system. You did this? Yes. Why? I looked up carefully. Because nobody else was going to. Interesting honestly. Because neglected children become adults who automatically repair broken systems before resting. Margaret pulled up a chair beside my desk. No smile. No pity. Just curiosity. Tell me what else you see that's broken. That sentence changed my life more than any motivational speech ever could. Interesting thing about good leaders. They recognize survival skills before the survivor fully understands their value. While I rebuilt myself quietly in Portland, my mother rebuilt the story of me back in Ohio. According to Aunt Patricia. Within a month, Diane Lawson told the women's ministry at First Presbyterian that I was receiving care at a residential facility. She never specified which one. She didn't need to. Interesting honestly. Because small towns complete ugly stories automatically. My old apartment above the hardware store? Meredith moved into it temporarily. Sold half my furniture. Kept my winter coats. Told the landlord I abandoned everything. My father handled neighbors with practiced sadness. We just hope she's safe. Voice cracking perfectly. Performance level grief. Interesting thing about passive men. They often become excellent actors after years beside narcissists. Kyle posted vague Facebook statuses constantly. Some people would rather run than grow up. Family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty. Praying for people who throw everything away. All about me. All vague enough to avoid accountability. Interesting honestly. Because cowardly people weaponize implication instead of direct accusation. So that became the official Lawson family narrative. Selena snapped at Thanksgiving. Selena abandoned her family. Selena disappeared somewhere unstable. And for 7 years? That version of me lived in Ridgewood while the real me built a career 2,400 miles away. Interesting thing about scapegoats. Families don't just exile them emotionally. They turn them into cautionary tales afterward. Families don't just exile scapegoats emotionally. They turn them into cautionary tales afterward. Interesting thing about reputation. Once a lie becomes useful socially, people protect it harder than truth. By year 3 in Portland, I stopped surviving and started building. Huge difference. Interesting honestly. Because healing doesn't arrive dramatically. Not usually. Sometimes it arrives disguised as routine. Paying rent on time. Buying groceries without panic. Falling asleep without replaying old arguments in your head. Interesting honestly. Because peace feels unfamiliar when chaos raised you. By year 3 in Portland, I wasn't the scared girl from Ridgewood anymore. I managed operations for 12 affordable housing projects across Oregon. Budgets. Development schedules.